Okay, today we're going to be looking at paraphrasing practice. Now, we've kind of already touched on this topic just a little bit because I've already introduced the idea of writing APA citations, both integral citations and non-integral citations. So, paraphrasing is part of that process, and it's basically translating the material of the text you're working with, whether it's a story, an article, a novel, into your own voice, and it's primarily used in our class for citations. But if you think about it, paraphrasing is something that we do all the time, right? If you're retelling your friend about a TV show you saw the other night or a sports game you saw the other night, you're paraphrasing what happened. You're not repeating word for word what you read in the original, I would assume, or what you heard from the television. You're changing it, and you're still trying to capture the main idea, but you're shifting it into your voice. Now, when we do paraphrasing for writing, it's important that we do it properly, and that we are mindful of the fact that you need to honor the original creator of that content. So you need to honor the author of that content so that you're not stealing their idea, you're using their idea by giving them credit to support your own position. So let's take a look at this. So first, paraphrasing. What is it? And why is it so important in English class? And why is it so important in education in general? So first of all, paraphrasing is the process, as we've kind of stated already, of transferring source ideas into your voice. So part of the key here is that the changes that you make need to be significant enough that you don't have the exact same wording from the original sentence. So when I say exact same wording, I mean I don't even want two of the words to be the same as two of the words in the original. By that I mean like two specific or kind of special phrasing. The way it's written, you can't use the same vocab. You can't even use the same little prepositional phrase or something. You need to find a way to say it in your voice. And that's the tricky part here. It's more of a higher level on Bloom's taxonomy of intelligences, because you're not just comprehending, but you're analyzing and you're evaluating and then you're synthesizing. So you're using those top three levels to rephrase something and put it into your words. So this skill is particularly important to academic writing because it's the golden ticket to avoiding plagiarism. As long as you paraphrase and put your paraphrase into a citation, you're never ever going to get slammed for plagiarism because you followed the proper process to avoid that. Okay, and plagiarism, of course, is stealing the idea from someone else's work and using it as your own. This is not allowed at VIU or any other major university or college, because the whole thing about higher education is it's okay to use someone else's ideas as long as you give them credit for it. And that's if you look at academic writing and especially article writing, this is part of that process where we're trying to advance ideas by building on what other people have said. So first you have to check the validity, you have to check the truth of the original before you use it. And because we're working with fiction, we're working with kind of travel stories, or some of the stories that I've written they're based on real events. Of course, they're things that happen in my life, but they're a fictional retelling, or they're a travel story retelling of those events. So you are trusting that I am not making things up, that the stories happened as I've written them. So you're trusting me, and then you're translating those words into your own voice for the purpose of supporting your writing. So this skill adds academic power to your writing, and this makes sense, right? Because when you're borrowing an idea from an expert, you are adding that expert voice to your position. Um, and it's basically like saying, hey, I'm trying to prove the idea of E equals mc squared. um, I'm just going to try to talk about it. People are probably going to go, okay, well, what do you know about energy? What do you know about physics? What do you know about? But if I say Einstein stated that E equals mc squared, which is actually, that would be a direct quote, right? Because that's the original formula. Um, if we were to paraphrase it, Einstein stated the idea that if you want to understand energy, you have to understand how much things weigh. And there's also this universal constant, and if you times their weight by the universal constant squared, you're going to be able to work with understanding energy. So that would be kind of a paraphrase of that original. And then I would say, this isn't my concept. It comes from Einstein, one of the greatest human thinkers of all time. So that adds that academic power or that credibility to the idea, right? So finally, it's also important to note that by showing me that you can paraphrase, you're demonstrating the ability to learn academic systems like APA. Okay, so now it's time to move into talking about the steps of how to do proper paraphrasing. Step one, so obviously you need to read the original, you need to understand it. I actually promote reading it out loud, because this kind of is the best way to kind of really engage with the idea. Step two, you should turn over or cover the original work. So you shouldn't be staring at the actual sentence when you're trying to do the paraphrase, because then you have a tendency to copy the phrasing or to copy the sentence structure or to use the same words, and those are all things you don't really want to do when you paraphrase. So you read it out loud, turn it over, then you're going to stop and think about what it really means, right? Stop and ask yourself, what is the core of this? What is the gist? And then finally, you're going to move into the redrafting of that idea, where you restate the core of that idea in your voice, in your words. So here are a couple of tips to be considered for paraphrasing. Tip number one, synonyms will become a very powerful aid to you in this process. So try to use synonyms. If there's a word in the sentence and you're not sure how to rephrase it, go to thesaurus.com, which I will show you in my second video. I'm going to model this process for a couple of short chunks of language, and then obviously you can assume that the work you're going to do today is going to be to show me that you can paraphrase in citations. So you're going to be creating 3 or 4 citations of your own that are paraphrases from some of the stories we've been working with in this unit, in this module. Okay, so I'll go through that. And tip number 2, change the sentence formula. So if it's a compound sentence in the original, don't use a compound sentence. Change it to complex B, or just by changing the formula of the sentence, the structure of the sentence, you're going to change the way it reads, the way it looks, and this is going to move it farther away from plagiarism, okay? Okay, good. So I've already hinted that there's going to be some practical work attached to this. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that our second learning check is coming up next week. So we've already done one of our unit tests. Now we're going to do our second unit test next week, covering off the idea of short stories, and how to analyze them, and all of the writing that we've been working on with short stories. There's going to be a paraphrasing section on that test that is going to be basically doing exactly what I'm going to demonstrate in the second video today. So although the practice assignment is not for any marks, you will be doing exactly the same process on the learning check next week. So the benefit to you here is that by doing the homework and doing it well and getting my feedback on your process, that should help prepare you for the midterm. Okay, also, or it's not a midterm, sorry, it's a learning check. I misspoke there. Also, I want you to make 2 study cards from this mini lecture, and they can be sent in to show me that your deck is growing. So obviously, now knowing that we have a learning check coming up next week, you should start your review cycle from today. Tomorrow is going to be a pure work day for you guys. So what that means is I'm not going to be adding any new content tomorrow on Thursday. I'm just going to be available to answer your questions, but you should still come and check into the digital classroom tomorrow so that I see that you are there and that you are working on everything that you have in the pipe. So I will also be uploading a checklist today that will show you exactly what is expected for Module 3B. So just a reminder, on May 29th, Friday, by midnight, you need to hand in your assignments for Modules 3A and 3B. So that's our short story unit, those 2 modules together. Okay,